All is not well on the odd socks allotment. Now, May can be a hard year when you're starting to grow all your plants. The weather can be unpredictable. You can still get hard frosts. You can even still get snow. The wind this year has been horrendous. It just doesn't seem to have let off. There's been a constant wind coming through the allotment continuously. So it's not just the challenges of the weather. This time of year, the slugs all come out of hiding and want to munch on everything that you've planted. Now, there is so many different ways to deal with slugs and snails, and I'm going to say 98 to 99% of them don't really work. Now, we've tried the wool. The snails were actually underneath the wool, using it as shelter, actually getting to the plants that way. I've seen them crawl over the wall. I've found them inside the wall in the day. I've also, with the wool, what I've found last year is the actual birds came down to take the wool for their nests, damaging the plants as they did. They didn't mean to. They were after the wool, but unfortunately the plants got pulled around while they were collecting the wool, and a lot of them got broken. Tried eggshell. Doesn't work. We collect them. So whenever we see them or we go hunting, we collect them and remove them from on site. I've done all manner of things. Bear traps, they're okay. But in general, it's not, with this size allotment, I would need about 3 or 4 per bed. That's a lot of alcohol a week. And I don't think I should be giving more alcohol to the slugs than what I can consume myself. Keeping the area tidy and free from bits of wood, somewhere for them to hide, is one of the best methods to do. Removing any dead plant material on the bottom of your plants. This will actually attract any slugs or snails because it's decomposing, even if it's still on the plant. These attract slugs and snails. Trying to have good husbandry on your plot. All this actually helps. The birds are great as well. We have a couple of families of robins nearby. We have blackbirds. Unfortunately, yes, we have pigeons, which are no benefit whatsoever. And that's another pest that we have to deal with. We've got multiple pigeon bird nests all around us here. And they will literally watch you to take that netting off any brassica cage or any other planting place just to get in there while you're not looking. So slugs and snails are something that in general we all have to just deal with to a certain degree and mitigate that damage. I found overplanting, over sowing really does actually help. So when things do get eaten, there's something to replace. We also use a lot of sacrificial planting. So in our heavily manured areas, we've planted loads and loads of lettuces that we had left over. Now the slugs have gone for the lettuces and left the squashes, and that's worked quite well for us this year. Always, always, always over sow your seeds to what you need, because it'll be really gutting if you start with 10 plants, lose 7 and end up with 3. If 3 is all you want, then that's fine. I'm after more. So on some of my tomato plants that I put outdoors a little while ago, I've already lost 3. Actually, I've lost 4. But I keep spares, so I don't actually have to start again. Now, you could just plant something else in that position if you haven't got any spares. But I'm after my tomato crop this year. So I'm actually going to have to replace the damage to the tomatoes. Now, this false rumour of slugs don't attack tomato plants, it's rubbish. They do. Might not be their first choice, but they will go for your tomato plants. And it's normally they'll eat part of your stem. Now today I've got to replace 3 in this one bed. Now it's the one area, so while I'm there, I'm literally going to check the soil and surrounding area for slugs and snails and remove from the site. Now, one of the other issues we've had this year, because it's been a really strange year, is our potatoes. Now, we planted our potatoes on Paddy's Day, so I think it was the 14th of Feb. But we'd never used this particular ground before. Now I know the previous tenant used to use raised beds. We flattened it all out because the raised beds were just basically soil from the actual allotment that had been put in, and it was just so full of weeds. So we weeded, spreaded. Obviously it's still full of weeds, but I'm not breaking my back on it this year. The potatoes have been extremely spotty coming up to the surface. Now there's some rows where we've got nothing, and some rows that are starting to come through, so it might be okay. But for 8, almost 9 weeks, it's extremely slow. Now I am a little bit concerned with it, and we have started making plans to actually plant some other things in these beds so they don't go to waste. There's no point wasting ground if you can help it. Now there is things that you can plant to the side of the potatoes and everything else, but we're trying to keep a clear path. Potatoes this year are going to be a really big disappointment. I think whatever's in this soil, there could be some actual issues with this soil. Been growing potatoes for 20 plus years, never had an issue with like this. Always grew potatoes. I've even grown them in the compost heap and had a fantastic harvest. Potatoes are one of those things that you can just literally bury and leave to their own device. They don't need no faffing. But we've struggled this year, and that's the thing. It doesn't matter how many years you have been gardening, there will always be issues on your plot with one thing or another. Everybody, even the most expertise person in the world, has failures, and it's okay to have failures. Failures is how we learn. What works in one part of the country might not actually work here. You have to learn each year about what actually works on your allotment. What works in one bed might not work in another. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't stress, but have something ready to go into that bed that may succeed. And that's where successional planting comes in. So we have been sowing seeds, and we're sowing seeds later on today, where we can actually fill in any empty spaces. So we are making the most of what we are growing. An empty space is room for weeds, and you don't want weeds. You want to be able to have produce that you can actually use, or plants, flowers, anything that you can enjoy, whatever you're doing on your allotment. So having something to go into that space or cram in somewhere else is a great benefit. So always oversow to what you need up to an extent without taking the mickey, guys, like me. So that's another failure on our plot this year. Again, we all get them. Another failure that we've kind of had is some of our Pak Choy. Now you saw how it was all getting eaten a few weeks back. Well, they've all bloomed and they've all gone fantastic, and they've actually gone past the stage of where the insects are doing more damage than good. Unfortunately, they've bolted. Now, bolting means that the plant's stressed, panicked, and sent up its flowers to be able to seed to repopulate next year. Now, Pak Choy is a vegetable that actually bolts very, very easy, but I've never had it bolt this early. It normally always bolts if you plant it a bit later on and it's growing through the hottest summer months. It doesn't like to grow in that kind of heat. It stresses it out. This could be a whole manner of things, but it's a really interesting take about what's actually happened. Now it prefers cooler weather. Now where we've had hot days, occasionally it hasn't gone past 20 degrees. And the night times have been obviously much lower. But it looks like in this particular bed, I've actually lost most of my Pak Choy. You can eat the flowers of Pak Choy, and in general, even if it does bolt, it doesn't majorly alter the taste of the actual plant itself. But I'll be starting these again, but not until July. July is a better time to sow your Pak Choy seeds now, so it doesn't have to deal with that major heat of the summer, and encouraging it to actually bolt. And I think I might actually grow it in a different bed. Last year I grew it in a slightly shadier bed. And I think that was one of the reasons I got a really good crop off of it, because it was a little bit cooler. I think this particular bed here is just too much in the sun. It's too much for it, doesn't like it. And that's something you'll have to experiment through the year with any failures. Is it in the right position for what it actually needs and thrives in? So another failure, because at the end of the day, I've got no qualms with showing my failures. It's not all brightness and butterflies. The carrots that I sowed. Now, we've got 2 bathtubs and we filled them with a topsoil and a little bit of compost and sand. And we sowed lots of carrots. Now, on my side, I've sown loads of rainbow carrots. I've sown them twice, and this is what's going on with it. Now, the germination rates are extremely poor. Now, this is seed that I actually used last year in my no-dig beds with fresh compost, not even that deep a bed because it was newly made, no digs, and I had fantastic carrots. I create a bed that's specifically for carrots, nice and free draining, no stones, nothing. The second time around I re-sowed, I used a fresh batch of the same carrots that I'd bought actually this year. I think I got about 5 germinated. It was really poor. Now, considering how many carrots I'd actually sown in this bathtub, it's probably about 0.5% actual germination. But, so I thought it was maybe the soil or the seeds or something like that. But as you can see from this side, those carrots were sown 2 weeks before my other carrots. Now, this was all over a month ago that these were all sown. The difference is really, really strong. Now, the difference with these carrots is just literally the variety. It's the same soil, same conditions and everything. Apart from my husband dumped a load of veggie scraps on the very bottom. That's the only difference between the 2 bathtubs. Now, because these have all completely grown, I'm actually thinking it's the seed, which is, it's so disappointing. Fresh seed from this year that we actually bought, and the germination rate is so poor. Both were covered with glass to germinate on top of the actual bathtubs. Both have been treated exactly the same. So we've re-sown the other bathtub again, but this time we've actually sown, I think we've sown some more of the same seed to give it one more go, and we've also sown the leftovers of any seed carrots that we've actually got. But we've actually haven't got enough to do the whole bathtub, I don't think. So that was all sown 2 days ago. So I'll be really interested to see whether it actually germinates in that bathtub. If it doesn't germinate, same conditions as this one has germinated, then there's obviously something in this soil that the carrots do not like. Now, in general, everything else isn't actually too bad. There's a bit of nibble here and there, which you will get. You're never going to get pristine plants and vegetables unless you do loads of certain pesticides and everything else, which you don't want on your homegrown allotment. You may as well just go to the supermarket and buy your own veg. There's definitely challenges to the growing season, but do not beat yourself up about it. It's fine. I'll plant something else here now. It's given me the space to try something else. And seeds this time of year really do germinate and grow very quickly. So it won't be long before this space actually fills up again. But don't be disheartened, guys. It's absolutely fine. Just be prepared to put something else in its place. Keep your chin up, don't stress about it, and enjoy everything else on your plot. Sometimes we forget to enjoy. We work so hard and sometimes we get so stressed about what we're growing, we fail to actually just look up and enjoy the moment. Now, my rhubarb is actually picked up. We had Hessian collars around each rhubarb because last year we actually sowed it by seed and we planted it in a massive bed that we'd actually used for potatoes, so there was loads and loads of room. We've then created 3 more no-dig beds. So I put the collars around it to stop the wood chip as we were forming some of the new areas for the new beds, but I'd left it on too long, and this had caused so much dampness around the roots of the rhubarb that it actually started to rot the rhubarb. I removed those about 2 weeks ago, and they're all actually bouncing back, but they are in the wrong place. They're not going to be suitable to grow where I've actually got them. So later on in the year, once they've died back, I will plant them in a different position where they will not be in the way, because it's a lot of rhubarb, and I think they could all do with a really good healthy dose of manure, so they'll have a nice new spot for the next new year.